Chapter 1 You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Registering at Kunlun Mountain Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, this is the 9th summit. A middle-aged man led Jianglan on the mountain peak. This was one of the 9 main peaks of the Kunlun Immortal Mountain. From today onwards, you are a disciple here, and the only disciple of the 9th summit. The environment here is not good. If you are successful in your studies and want to leave, just let me know. But if my time is up, you can't leave even if you want to. Jianglan listened to the middle-aged man's voice and nodded lightly. It wasn't easy for him to join Kunlun Mountain, so he naturally wouldn't leave rashly. After transmigrating for so long, he had always heard of the power of Kunlun Mountain. This was a world of vast wilderness, where gods and demons were everywhere and immortals were gathered. If they were not careful, they would be doomed. It was safer for him to join Kunlun. However, his innate potential was not too great. In the end, he was chosen by the 9th summit. This was a place that none of the disciples seemed to want to go. When he arrived, he saw many people gloating. There were even people who were betting on how long he could last here. There is a cave at the back of the mountain in the 9th summit. The cave is connected to the netherworld. The aura of the netherworld is different from the nimbus of universe. It can be slightly harmful to ordinary people. It is not friendly to cultivators either. As a disciple of the 9th summit, you will definitely be affected by the aura. However, persevering will help you in your cultivation. But many people could not persist. This is also why no disciples would come to the 9th summit. The middle-aged man glanced at Jianglan and said, I, the Lord of the 9th summit, Mo Jingdong, will be your master from today onwards. I will do my best to nurture you. I hope you will stay in the 9th summit. The 9th summit's duty is to guard the entrance to the netherworld. Jianglan was a little surprised. He knew that there were passageways connecting Kunlun to the heavenly realm, but he didn't know that there were also passageways connecting to the netherworld. The netherworld was on the 9th summit, so the passageway to the heaven realm should be on the 1st summit. He wasn't sure, but since the other party had made it so clear, he wouldn't be ignorant about the ways of the world. He immediately knelt down and kowtowed 3 times. Greetings from disciple, master. His future was uncertain. Fortunately, it was not as dangerous as it was outside. Ding! Jianglan was stunned for a moment when he heard this sound, but he was soon overjoyed. It was finally here. He had been waiting for so many years. Primordial registration system activated. At the beginning of the world, the primordial chaos was the main force. It split into multiple great Tao that spread across the mortal world. The host can register near the great Tao. The closer you are to the great Tao, the better it is. If you register on the great Tao, you can sign in repeatedly. Other than the first time, what you acquire from repeated registration thereafter would be far less than the first round. Approaching the source of the great Tao requires the host to have enough physique and destiny. If the host's capability is too low, he or she will not be able to withstand the gift of the great Tao. You can sign in once a day. After listening to the system's introduction, Jianglan had an accurate understanding of the registration system. But what were the paths of the great Tao? He could not see them at all. Logically speaking, the more special a place was, the closer it should be to the great Tao. On the path of the great Tao, one could be signed in permanently. Even though it was inferior to the first time, it was most definitely still a cultivation resource. Kunlun Mountain is such a special place. There must be the veins of the great Tao, right? Jianglan made a decision. Then, he chanted inwardly, System, I will sign in here. This was the mountain path of the 9th summit, a part of Kunlun Mountain. Even if it was not the great Tao, it was definitely close to it. It was hard to say what would happen. Furthermore, he did not dare to sign in on the great Tao in his current state. After all, it was possible to fail if one's cultivation level was not high enough. Soon, Jiang heard the system's voice. Ding! Signed in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the gift of the Great Tao. You have obtained the movement technique, 9 steps of heavenly travel. 9 steps of heavenly travel. One of the most rapid speeds of the vast wilderness. After mastering it, one can walk on the vast wilderness. Immortals, devils, gods, and ghosts will not be able to approach. The moment the system's voice ended, a book appeared in Jianglan's mind. The name of this book was 9 Steps of Heavenly Travel. Moreover, he had a feeling that he could take out this book if he wanted to. In fact, he could even assimilate it into his mind to learn this movement technique. 9 Steps of Heavenly Travel. I've never heard of it, but from the introduction, I can tell it's extremely powerful. However, I'm still an ordinary person. Even if I learned it, I might not be able to use it. Jianglan was very happy to receive such a cultivation technique. At least the signing system was real. However, without receiving reminder from the system about the Great Tao, he probably could not sign in here again. Of course, he did not dare to learn it immediately right now either. Once something strange occurred, it was hard to say if they would encounter any mishaps. He had no idea what kind of person his master was. One had to be wary of others. Get up and follow me. Mo Jingdong did not hold any other emotions on his face. He had taken in more than one disciple, but none of them stayed. He had no idea how long Jianglan would last. Jianglan followed Mo Jingdong to a courtyard. This will be your residence from now on. I'll be at the top of the mountain. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Mo Jingdong looked at Jianglan and continued, find me at the top of the mountain tomorrow afternoon. I'll bring you to the entrance of the netherworld and teach you the introductory mental cultivation. With that, Mo Jingdong disappeared on the spot. Jianglan didn't see how he disappeared. This is the power of an immortal. It would be a lie to say that he was not envious. If it was in the past, Jianglan might have felt that he was far from achieving such a level. But it was different now. He felt that it wouldn't be long before he could reach this enviable and safe state. Jianglan entered the courtyard. He walked to the center and sat there, waiting for the sky to turn dark. After the sky turned dark, Jianglan turned his attention to the book in his mind. The 4 words on it seemed to contain boundless attraction, as though they held the mysteries of heaven and earth. With the guidance of his thoughts, the book on 9 Steps of Heavenly Travel began to open. He flipped through the book page by page. At first, it wasn't fast, but it got faster and faster. Countless pieces of information began to flow into Jianglan's mind. A loud explosion was heard. The world in Jianglan's mind seemed to have exploded. Immediately afterwards, it was as if he entered an unknown world. The sea of stars was dazzling. He felt like he was in a boundless universe, and the world was beneath his feet, allowing him to walk wherever he wanted. If one took 9 steps, they could reach the ends of the earth. Suddenly, Jianglan woke up. He looked at his own body and had a feeling that even an ordinary cultivator would not be able to touch him if he ran now. And this is when I have yet to begin cultivation. If I did, how exaggerated would this 9 steps of heavenly travel technique be? As long as I can achieve phenomenal success, I won't have to worry about traveling the vast wilderness. BNOLDM, it's my first time signing in and I already acquired something like this. What if I continued? Jianglan was eager to try. He was waiting for the next day. But this time, he had to sign in at a better place. Chapter 2 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Entering the sect overnight translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios Jianglan looked at the time and felt that it was not far from the next day. But where should he sign in the next day? The peak of the 9th summit. It seemed like a good place, but it didn't feel like it was suitable. The netherworld entrance. This registration could fail as well. Oh yes, I can sign at the main entrance of Kunlun Mountain. The ninth summit was a part of Kunlun, and the Kunlun Gate was the entrance to the entire Kunlun. It was an extraordinary place where everyone could enter and leave. The peak of the ninth summit might be close to the Great Tao, but the gift he could receive at the gate might be more practical. Was the 9 steps of heavenly travel not good? Good. So good that he was speechless. But right now, it was not practical enough for him. What he needed was the foundation. After making his decision, Jiang Luan walked out of the room. It was almost midnight and the sky was extremely dark. Fortunately, there was the full moon in the sky tonight. When Jiang Luan left the 9th summit, Mo Jingdong, who was originally sitting on the mountain peak, looked at Jiang Lan's back with slight desolation. The 9th summit was rather special because the entrance to the netherworld tested one's nature. If he couldn't get through, he couldn't stay. This was also the reason why he had to teach the other party mental cultivation the next day before bringing him to understand the entrance to the netherworld. He left in the end. Mo Jingdong sighed and closed his eyes. He had waited for so many years and accepted so many disciples, but not a single disciple had entered his sect. No one was able to stay here for 10 years. Jiang Luan left the 9th summit. After spending some time, he finally arrived at the entrance of Kunlun at dawn. He didn't walk out. Instead, he stood at the gate and looked at the magnificent Kunlun entrance. Then, he chanted in his heart, "System, sign in at Kunlun Gate." The system's voice sounded in Jiang Lan's mind. Ding! Signed in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the gift of the Great Tao. You have obtained the cultivation technique, Kunlun Heart Sutra. Kunlun Heart Sutra. The supreme cultivation technique of Kunlun that connects to the netherworld and connects to the heavenly realm. It cultivates the vital energy of all living things and transforms into a fearful heavenly might. Then, Jiang Luan saw the Kunlun Heart Sutra in his mind. Jiang Luan suppressed the ecstasy in his heart. The Kunlun Heart Sutra was one of the fundamental principles of Kunlun. He actually obtained it just like that. However, there was still no reminder about the Great Tao. It seemed like he could not sign in here continuously as well. However, there were so many places in Kunlun Mountain that there had to be the Great Tao. Without thinking too much about it, Jiang Luan intended to return to the 9th summit. However, on his way back, he bumped into 2 disciples. Each of them had a lightning mark on their faces. One was under his left eye, while the other was under his right eye. But he did not know either of them. Therefore, he did not stay for long. He had only taken 2 steps when he heard a voice behind him. Isn't this the new disciple of the 9th summit? Is he planning to go to another peak? He didn't even last a day. How rare is that? It's not uncommon. In the past, there were also people who could not last even a day. But those who went to the 9th summit usually did not have much talent. It is more of a problem if the other peaks would accept them after they left. They're useless. The other peaks seldom keep them. He seems to be heading back to the 9th summit. Looks like he's not leaving. That's not important. With his talent, he won't be able to stay for long. Just watch. Even those with powerful cultivation knowledge would find it difficult to stay in the 9th summit, much less a minor character like that. It's a route that practically cuts off one's own path to immortality. For countless years, only a single immortal has remained there. Jiang Luan listened to their voices but didn't say anything. He was just a minor character. Today, he might be inferior, but in the future, he would definitely be an existence that these people couldn't strive for. As long as he signed into the system, these people did not even have the right to look up to him. As for not being able to stay long on the 9th summit. What a joke. He was going to stay on the 9th summit forever. The main thing was that it was safer with fewer people. When Jiang Luan returned to the 9th summit, Mo Jingdong, who had been meditating, suddenly smiled. It's good that you've made up your mind. I hope that one day, you'll be able to make me give you high hopes. Then, Mo Jingdong closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. There was nothing else on the ninth summit. All they had to do was keep a close eye on the netherworld passageway. However, this was indeed the most difficult task in all of Kunlun. After returning to his residence, Jiang Lan immediately observed the Kunlun Heart Sutra without any hesitation. When he saw the Kunlun Heart Sutra, he realized that there was a ball of energy that could conceal his current cultivation progress. After confirming that there was no effect, Jiang Lan immediately learned the Kunlun Heart Sutra. The moment the Kunlun Heart Sutra entered his body, he could see a lot of vital energy even with his eyes closed. These energies would fuse into his body as he worked on the Heart Sutra. However, his body seemed to be shrouded in fog. Not long later, he felt his body fill with this spiritual aura. The qi entered his body and flowed through 100 veins, connecting to the spiritual platform and opening up the immortal's dwelling. His body emitted a golden light as he observed the 8 extraordinary meridians. At this moment, Jiang Lan felt as if he had walked from one room to the public square. It was as if the world had become much bigger. He could see every corner of his body. In the end, everything returned back to normal. I've entered the sect. Jiang Lan opened his eyes in disbelief. The first hurdle of immortal cultivation was entering the sect. Ordinary aptitudes required 100 days of preparation, and those with formidable aptitudes required at least a month. He did not do anything. He only cultivated the Kunlun Heart Sutra, and he was able to enter the sect overnight. If this was to spread, it would be absolutely shocking. This was the value of the Kunlun Heart Sutra, the supreme mental cultivation technique of Kunlun. When he reached the highest level, along with the 9 steps of heavenly travel, where couldn't he go to the vast wilderness? Perhaps he could walk around in the netherworld as well. Of course, that still needed to wait until he had achieved immortal ascension. Otherwise, it would be useless. When ordinary people cultivated, they first refined their qi. Then, they would enter foundation establishment to build their foundation, before condensing their golden core, and refining their souls in the soul transformation realm. Thereafter, they would refine their spirits back to emptiness in the void refinement stage, then transcend the tribulations to become an immortal. Jiang Lan was already at the qi refinement stage. Starting qi refinement meant that he was no longer immortal. Not long after, Jiang Lan turned his attention to the invisible fog. The fog continued to surround him. Just by sensing it, Jiang Lan understood that this was a concealment brought about by the Kunlun Heart Sutra. It obscured the heavenly secrets, preventing others from seeing his cultivation. It really suits me. The night passed uneventfully. Master, disciple requests to see you. Jiang Lan stood at the edge of the 9th summit and spoke respectfully. Mo Jingdong was currently cultivating with his eyes closed. Looks like you're already prepared to stay on the 9th summit. Mo Jingdong opened his eyes to look at Jiang Lan and said with relief, on the first night of the 9th summit, many disciples will see some inner demons. It's already very good that you managed to withstand them. Inner demons. Jiang Lan was a little surprised. He didn't feel anything last night. He soon understood that it was because of the Kunlun Heart Sutra. The Kunlun Heart Sutra cultivated the vital energy of all living things and transformed them into a terrifying heavenly might. How could an evil spirit go close to him? At this moment, Jiang Lan felt like he could stay on the 9th summit forever. The aura of the netherworld did not harm him at all. Yes, Master. Disciple will always stay on the 9th summit. You will be my master for life, Jiang Lan said firmly. If nothing happened, he would not leave casually. This was Kunlun. He wanted to rely on Kunlun and his master to become the strongest existence. Mo Jingdong paused for a second and said calmly, let's go. I'll show you the entrance to the netherworld and teach you the introductory mental cultivation technique. Although Mo Jingdong spoke calmly, his happiness could not be concealed. Perhaps this disciple would really stay here. Chapter 3 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The Paths of the Great Tao Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios Behind the Mountains. When Jianlan arrived, he instantly saw the dark auras. These auras gave people a cold feeling. They seemed to be able to trigger negative emotions. So that's the case. No wonder they say that no one would be able to stay here for long. If someone were to continue cultivating under such circumstances, it would be very easy to go mad. Jianlan came to a conclusion. However, these auras had no effect on him. The Kunlun Heart Sutra cultivated the chi of all living things, and the auras of the netherworld were included as well. Swoosh! Jianlan saw a glow of light enveloping him. The netherworld auras here are extremely dense. You haven't cultivated yet, so they will be too much of a burden for your body if you come into contact with them, said Mo Jingdong. Thank you, Master. Jianlan immediately thanked him. Although nothing would have happened to him. Soon, Jianlan saw a huge cave. There was a dark aura visible to the naked eye in the cave. I'll bring you in to take a look. As Mo Jingdong spoke, he led Jianlan in. Just as they entered the cave, Jianlan suddenly heard the system's voice. Ding! A path of the Great Tao has been discovered. The host can sign in here permanently. There is a Great Tao path here. Jianlan was a bit surprised. He finally found the Great Tao, and it was at the back of the mountains. It looked like the 9th summit was indeed his blessed land. The netherworld's entrance was close to the Great Tao. In other words, the paths of the Grand Tao were indeed very rare. Perhaps the entire Kunlun mountain might not have many paths of the Great Tao. Now, he wouldn't even go to the other peaks if he was asked to. Jianlan arrived at the interior of the cave. The moment he entered, he saw a huge well inside the cave. All of the dark aura originated from that well. You can't look directly at the entrance to the netherworld. When you've become an immortal, you can take a look. It will be of great help to you. Remember not to look at it now, Mo Jingdong said seriously. After Jianlan nodded, Mo Jingdong gently tapped his forehead. At this moment, Jianlan realized that a lot of information was being transmitted into his mind. Soon, he knew what they were. They were cultivation techniques and spells. The Kunlun Chi establishing technique and the meditation spell. With just one look, Jianlan knew that this Kunlun Chi establishing technique was similar to the Kunlun Heart Sutra. However, it was far inferior to the Kunlun Heart Sutra. It was probably adapted from the Kunlun Heart Sutra. And the meditation spell was an incantation that allowed one to calm their heart and clear their mind. It would be useful for his mental cultivation. Ordinary disciples only cultivate the ordinary chi refining technique. What I'm imparting to you as your master is the best chi establishing technique in Kunlun. It's the chi establishing technique that the elders of Kunlun had comprehended from the Kunlun Heart Sutra left behind by their ancestors. Remember not to pass it on to anyone. Mo Jingdong retracted his hand and continued, the meditation spell will help to reduce the influence of the netherworld. However, if you are able to endure it, you will be able to train faster when you are close to the netherworld cave. You have to be confident enough to come here. If you were to cultivate in the back mountain, you have to come to me for a checkup every few days. So that I prevent you from developing any inner demons. If you persevere, the influence of the netherworld aura will decrease. Disciple will remember Master's teachings, Jianlan immediately said. In his opinion, his master treated him really well. Of course, what made him the happiest was that he could come here whenever he wanted. It was fine as long as he did not develop inner demons. That meant that he could come here often to sign in. What extraordinary thing would there be near the Great Tao? Jianlan looked forward to it. However, he was also a little worried. With his weak cultivation, it was hard to say if he would fail if he signed in near the Great Tao. But he had to try. He would do it tonight. At night. Jiang Lan opened his eyes. He had been cultivating the whole time. He realized that using the meditation spell was indeed of some help to his cultivation. Although it wasn't obvious, he naturally couldn't give up on this spell that could calm him down. In the future, his cultivation speed would definitely be very fast. When the time comes, it would be very dangerous for him if he did not have sufficient mental fortitude. Therefore, the calming spell was very useful for now. It's almost the wee hours of the morning. Let's go to the back mountain. Jiang Lan headed towards the back mountain. When he reached the back of the mountains, he felt as if he had triggered some kind of barrier. It must have been left behind by his master. Looks like I'll have to be more cautious when cultivating later. He had made a decision in his heart. On the peak of the 9th summit, Mo Jingdong had indeed detected Jiang Lan entering the back mountain. Going to the back mountain to cultivate on the first day. That's good. He's brave to try. However, I'll need to check on him in a couple of days. Mo Jingdong did not pay much attention to it after that. There was still a barrier at the entrance of the well that Jiang Lan couldn't approach. At this time, Jiang Lan had already arrived at the cave mouth of the netherworld. As he approached the cave, he heard the system's voice again. Ding! A path of the Great Tao has been discovered. The host can sign in here permanently. Do you want to sign in? This time, there was a reminder to sign in. Jiang Lan was a little curious. If he failed to sign in, would he be reminded in advance? He hadn't experienced it before, so he didn't know. But now, he had to try if he could successfully sign in. System, I'm signing in here. Jiang Lan muttered in his heart. Soon, the system's voice sounded. This time, Jiang Lan was a little nervous. He wasn't sure if he would fail the first time he signed in on the Great Tao. If he failed, he would lose a day. If he succeeded, he was curious what he would acquire. Ding! Signed in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the gift of the Great Tao. You have obtained the Taoist scripture. Creation of heaven and earth. Taoist scripture. Creation of heaven and earth contains the changes of heaven and earth. It combines the changes of the Great Tao and of all living things in space and time. It is infinitely wondrous and can be kept for 3 months. Taoist scripture. Jiang Lan was a bit surprised. What effect will it have on me? The introduction was shocking, but he didn't quite understand. Let's try it. Jiang Lan arrived at the Netherworld's cave abode and chose to use the Taoist scripture. The Taoist scripture was an unfathomable light in his mind, and it was extremely profound. Jiang Lan's thoughts stirred, and the Taoist scripture began to glow. Then, light enveloped Jiang Lan. Not long after, Jiang Lan felt as if he was sitting high up in the sky. At this moment, he saw the transformation, the deduction of all living things, and the cirrus of heaven and earth. This scene left Jiang Lan shaken, as if he was observing 3,000 world evolutions. As the heaven and earth changed, Jiang Lan felt the spiritual energy between heaven and earth gathering around him. He was like the center of a vortex, absorbing everything into his body. At this moment, Jiang Lan had a feeling that his breathing the breathing of the heavens and the earth. When he worked on his cultivation, it was like the earth changed between day and night, the life cycle of all living things was circulating. This was the Taoist scripture. Creation of heaven and earth. Jiang Lan was in this state for a long time. When he felt that his mind was full, he opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he found that he was still sitting in the Netherworld cave. However, he could clearly feel the changes in his body, as if there was a powerful wave of energy flowing through his veins. With just a perception, he was shocked to discover that his cultivation had undergone a tremendous change. Chapter 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Power of 9 Bulls Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, I've perfected the Qi refinement. Jiang was in disbelief. A normal person would only reach the first level of qi refinement in 100 days after entering the sect. After that, he would need several years before he perfected the qi refinement realm. Finally, he would try to break through to the foundation establishment. There were 9 levels of qi refinement. Every level required a large amount of time to cultivate and break through. However, he had perfected it in just a blink of an eye. The Taoist scripture was truly unimaginable. Then, Jiang examined the Taoist scripture in his mind again. According to the previous introduction, the Taoist scripture could be used for 3 months. In other words, during these 3 months, it would be as if he is receiving heaven's help during his cultivation. However, Jiang was quickly disappointed. Even though the Taoist scripture was still in his mind, it was no longer the same as before. In other words, he no longer possessed the same terrifying power of the Taoist scripture as he had first used it. But it's enough. 3 months is enough for me to advance to the foundation establishment realm. Jiang wasn't greedy. However, he knew one thing. The Taoist scripture could only be chanced upon by luck. Even if he signed in, he might not encounter it often. And to use the Taoist scripture correctly, it would be better to have a higher cultivation level. It would be a waste if the cultivation level was too low. Of course, he was currently weak, so not using it would only limit his improvement. In short, he had to have the strength to protect himself first. Even if he left it for the future, there had to be a future. Even if it was wasted, it was worth it. Jiang left the netherworld cave and saw light outside. It should be daybreak. When he walked outside, the sky was indeed slightly bright. The sun had just risen. It has been a whole night. It clearly felt like a moment. Jiang somewhat understood the time in the Taoist scripture. It was fleeting, and a single thought could last forever. After that, Jiang cultivated at ease on the 9th summit. To him, this place was very quiet, and there was not much he needed to do. At most, he would clean the hall of the 9th summit. After all, it was one of the 9 peaks. It was a must for there to be a hall. It was just that no one had come to visit, so it was a little abandoned. System: sign in at the 9th summit. When Jiang was cleaning up, he also decided to sign in. Ding! Signed in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the gift of the Great Tao. You have obtained the power of 9 bulls. Power of 9 bulls. When cultivated to the extreme, one punch can shatter mountains and break seas. It was a simple introduction, but Jiang felt that it was very useful to him now. What he lacked was offensive power. There were no other spells, so he could only use such crude and simple ones. He immediately learned the power of 9 bulls. A light flashed in his mind, and the power of 9 bulls instantly entered him. Jiang felt his body fill with strength. He punched out with his fist, which was much stronger than when he used the support of his spiritual energy. And this was only the strength of 1 bull. When all 9 bulls came through, who knew how strong he would be? What kind of bull is it? Why is it so strong? Clenching his fists, Jiang realized that he was much stronger than an ordinary bull. Perhaps the cows in the vast wilderness were more powerful. 6 months passed in the blink of an eye. Jiang woke up in the netherworld cave. The Taoist scripture had been completely absorbed by him 3 months ago. As expected, other than the first day, the subsequent effects were not as ideal. However, after he had completely absorbed the Taoist scripture, his cultivation level still rushed into the mid-stage of the foundation establishment realm. Now, because of some medicinal pills he obtained from signing in, he had entered the late stage of the foundation establishment. If he continued, he would have perfected it and began condensing his golden core. The golden core was an extremely complicated matter. Even with the Kunlun Heart Sutra, and even if he had been constantly signing in, condensing his golden core was still a difficult task. The gift of the great Tao would naturally speed up the speed at which he condensed his core. However, if he did not work hard himself, everything would be useless. Therefore, he cultivated every day, hoping to condense his golden core as soon as possible. Golden core cultivators were nothing to the entire Kunlun. But once he had a golden core, it meant that his strength would begin to condense. Among the disciples of Kunlun, he would also be front-ranking. Even some duties were just golden core cultivation. I have to work hard to condense my golden core. I've already accumulated quite a number of pills. Jiang Lan silently muttered to himself as he looked at the items he had acquired during his registrations in his mind. During the 6 months, Jiang Lan did not leave the 9th summit. He had been cultivating in the Netherworld's cave abode. He had been signing in here every day. He had no choice. He had already tried. In the entire 9th summit, only this place had the path of the Great Tao. If he didn't sign in here, he would have to run around. That would be too ostentatious. During these months of signing, he had obtained many medicinal pills. Marrow cleansing pill, foundation building pill, true origin pill, heavenly snow pill. There were also cultivation enhancements, energy enhancements, antidotes, and so on. But most of them were useless. There were also some useless skills. For example, the Kunlun Qi establishing technique that his master had given him, the 9 Qi foundation establishment technique that was common on the streets. Of course, there were more useful ones. For example, there were some spells, gravitational spells, the immovable wisdom king incantation, and the yin-yang swordsmanship. There were also some treasures like the crepe myrtle sword, the immortal binding rope, pseudo, and more. The rest was fine. The immovable wisdom king incantation was exceptionally important to Jiang Lan. His cultivation level had been increasing too quickly that his body was about to inflate. It was the immovable wisdom king incantation that stabilized his mindset. Otherwise, something would definitely happen. Powerful strength must be matched with a corresponding temperament. Jiang Lan knew that he was immortal, so he had to pay more attention to such matters. After all, it's been 6 months. Some disciples were still working hard on their 3rd level of Qi refinement. And yet he was considering condensing his golden core. The difference was more than 1,000 miles. It was a world apart. Chapter 5 You are listening at novelfull.audio. One Leaf Vision Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. After walking out of the Netherworld cave, Jiang Lan headed towards the peak of the 9th summit. Today was the day his master examined his body. In the past few months, these examinations had not been missed once. At first, he examined him once every 3 days, then once a week. If there were no problems with the check-up this time, the follow-up examination would be done once a month. Once he had completed his foundation establishment, there was no need for him to check again. He just needed to check occasionally. The main reason was because they were worried that he would give birth to inner demons and eventually be doomed. Jiang Lan understood this. He was also worried that he would have mental demons. After all, his advancement was too fast. As for his cultivation on the surface, it was at the 2nd stage of the Qi refinement realm, which was relatively superior. Although his innate talent was not great, his cultivation speed was not much slower than those geniuses. His master had really nurtured him with all his might. His cultivation techniques and medicinal pills were no less than his. In order to not leave any side effects, his master personally tempered his body. Although it was already useless to him, he still took in his master's sincerity. Even if he was truly invincible in the future, he would still remain here. Guard what his master wanted him to guard. This was comradeship. Of course, it was not that his master's teachings were useless. The theoretical knowledge and spells he imparted were all useful. For example, some imperial wind techniques. It was very convenient as they allowed him to travel in the air for a short period of time. There were also the imperial sword techniques. However, the imperial sword techniques could only be used after one reached foundation establishment. His master had taught him a rough idea, but Jiang Lan had already learned it. He just didn't dare to tell his master. Under normal circumstances, he would use all the imperial wind techniques. Soon, Jiang Lan arrived at the peak of the 9th summit. Master, disciple is here to check my state of mind. Jiang Lan arrived behind Mo Jingdong and spoke respectfully. At this moment, Mo Jingdong was standing at the edge of the mountain peak. He looked outside in a daze. When Jiang Lan's voice rang out, he turned to look at him. This was his favorite disciple after all these years. He was hard-working, serious, and could withstand the corrosion of the netherworld aura. He was impressed. Naturally, he was not stingy at all and gave everything he could. He wanted to nurture him well with all his might. It would allow him to escape the corrosion of the netherworld aura as soon as possible. Come here, Mo Jingdong said. He tapped Jiang Lan's forehead as he approached. It sounded like raindrops. Then, Mo Jingdong retracted his hand and said, "There's no problem. It seems that the netherworld aura won't be able to harm you. You just need to be examined once a month from now on. However, if you feel any discomfort midway, tell me immediately." "Yes, master." Jiang Lan nodded immediately. As long as it had nothing to do with the system, he would naturally come to ask his master. After all, he lacked theory in cultivation. Even with the system, he still had to take some detours. He needed guidance. "Oh, right. Make a trip down to the Kunlun main hall. Today is the day that the outstanding disciples of every summit will receive their Dharma treasures. Go and collect them," Mo Jingdong said softly. Outstanding disciples. Jiang Lan couldn't react in time. Are you not outstanding enough among the disciples of the 9th summit? Mo Jingdong glanced at Jiang Lan and asked. Jiang Lan did not know what to say. He was the only disciple of the 9th summit. Whether he was outstanding or not was not up to them. "Yes, master. I'll head over right now." Jiang Lan lowered his head and agreed. He hadn't signed in today, so it was good to go over and sign in as well. As for the Dharma treasures, he didn't really care. After all, he already had some of the better treasures. Kunlun Mountain would not give its disciples two powerful Dharma treasures either. However, it would be a Dharma treasure he could use in the open. He could not show the Dharma treasure he acquired during his sign-ins to anyone. At least, that was the case until he was strong enough. After that, Jiang Lan left the 9th summit and headed straight for the Kunlun main hall. The Kunlun main hall was not among the 9 peaks, but stood alone on its own peak. The Kunlun gate stood before the 9 peaks. As he walked to the hall, he could see green smoke curling up and auspicious clouds descending from the sky. What he heard was the clear cry of a crane and the Sanskrit of the great Tao. It was like an immortal paradise. When he arrived at the palace hall, there were many people there. They were all outstanding disciples of the various summits. At a glance, each of them had a cultivation level above foundation establishment, and there were even golden core experts. Jiang Lan was a bit surprised. Wasn't this a new generation of disciples? His second-stage Qi refinement realm was a little offensively conspicuous now. However, he remained silent and stood at the back. However, when the time came, he couldn't casually stand at the back anymore. Disciples of the various summits, please stand in your respective zones. A middle-aged man spoke. 9 beams of light descended from the sky, each marked with numbers 1 to 9. Soon, the disciples of the various peaks stood at their positions. Is there anyone from the 9th summit this time? I heard that there is, but the 9th summit has always been empty. There might one now but not the next time. True, but the disciple of the 9th summit can obtain quite a lot of things. He has to be worthy enough too. When Jianlan heard these words, he silently walked to the ninth summit zone. When he walked over, many people laughed. The second level of qi refinement. Isn't that too low? The weakest among us is already at the foundation establishment realm. This ninth summit disciple is really something. I'm speechless. This is a new disciple. It's normal for him to be weaker. I wondered if he's under a lot of pressure standing here. There was no pressure. Jianlan stood there without any mental pressure at all. This was because he didn't care about what these people were saying. He was listening to the system's voice. Ding. Signed in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the gift of the Great Tao. You have obtained the mystical power of one leaf vision. Chapter 6. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Unbelievable translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, One Leaf Vision. Concealed from the heavens above, and concealed from all living beings below. One's vision of the world can be neglected by something trivial. Jianlan looked what was in front of him and suddenly understood. This was something that could hide his secrets and hide what others saw. It was indeed very useful to him. Sometimes, it was inconvenient for him to make a move. It was also inconvenient to use Dharma treasures. As long as he had one leaf vision, no one would be able to see him clearly. If they fought, he would also be able to gain the upper hand. This was a mystical power that could not be learned. It had nothing to do with talent. It was rare for the same mystical power to appear. Even if it was the same, there wouldn't be many people in the entire vast wilderness who would have it. While Jianlan was still paying attention to the mystical power, the middle-aged man spoke again. Disciples, please begin accepting the Dharma treasures. How much you can take depends on your temperament. These words were basically directed at Jianlan, because he was the only one who came from the ninth summit. It was basically impossible for him to obtain all of them. Therefore, if he wanted to take more, he had to have a temperament that was strong enough. Otherwise, his Dharma treasures would harm others. This was the same as Jianlan's worry about the mismatch in his strength and temperament. A nouveau riche would be different from a rich man's son with inside information. Jianlan looked around him and realized that it was rare for others to get 2 Dharma treasures. It was not because they were weak-minded, but because they only had so many. As they were fast in taking their Dharma treasures, everyone had looked towards Jianlan. They wanted to know how many the disciple from ninth summit could take. Guess how many would he be able to take? Doviko, I've seen a disciple of the ninth summit in the past, but he only took 1. He didn't even touch a second item. Yes. I heard that he peed his pants on the spot because of the inner demons. That might be the case too. No matter what, he won't be able to take more than a few treasures. I remember that one of the senior brothers from the first summit had to use all of his power to get the 5th piece. Being able to take 3 treasures is already very rare. Don't even think about 3. By the time he reached the 2nd treasure, he would have been controlled by the mental demons. Everyone knows what sort of place the 9th summit is. If it were me, I would definitely just take the 1st treasure and not touch the 2nd. Jianlan looked at the Dharma treasures in front of him and realized that there were only 5 of them, which was already considered a lot. After all, he came alone. All Dharma treasures were divided according to the number of people. The lowest number for one summit was 5. Jianlan didn't know about this. But as he stood facing 5 Dharma treasures, he wanted to see how many he could take. According to those people, wanting to take a few treasures depended entirely on one's temperament. He wanted to see how his temperament was. Very quickly, Jianlan took a step forward. At this moment, a Dharma treasure automatically landed in his hand. It was a spirit sword used during the qi refinement stage. It was useless to Jianlan. But there was no reason not to take it. The first treasure is obtained unconditionally. If you want to take more later on, you need to have a certain level of temperament. You must remember to act within your capabilities. The middle-aged man kindly reminded Jiang Lan. Jiang Lan bowed his head in thanks. He still wanted to try. At this moment, the others were also watching. Most of them were just observing like it was a show. At this moment, Mo Jingdong was also looking in the direction of the Kunlun main hall from the 9th summit. It should be time to take the Dharma treasures. I wonder how many pieces my disciple can take. He should be able to obtain 3. It will be more difficult after that. Mo Jingdong had a certain level of expectation. Jiang Lan was the most outstanding disciple he had seen after all these years. Although his innate talent was average, his temperament was exceptional. If only you were more gifted, Mo Jingdong shook his head. I'm being greedy, too greedy. Enough. It's enough. In the Kunlun main hall, Jiang Lan looked at the second Dharma treasure before taking a step forward. Every step represented a Dharma treasure. The man in charge of the arrangements frowned at this. He had seen many disciples from the 9th summit, but there were very few of them who could obtain a second treasure. They more or less had a trace of inner demons in their hearts. This made it difficult for them to take more treasures. This disciple of the 9th summit was a little greedy. However, just as he was thinking this, a ray of light suddenly blossomed from Jiang Lan's body. A second Dharma treasure safely fell into Jiang Lan's hands. It was a pair of shoes. He got the second item. The attendant was somewhat surprised. Not only him, the other disciples were also taken aback. He got the second treasure so easily. Is this person silly? He doesn't have any inner demons in the 9th summit. He's just lucky, I guess. It looks like he's going to take the third one. He doesn't know when to stop. The second item is easy, but the third item is 10 times more difficult. It's simply impossible for ordinary disciples to obtain it. That's right. This is a threshold. I can tell that this disciple's innate talent is ordinary. It is simply impossible for him to obtain it. Jiang Lan's brows furrowed a little as he looked at the 3 treasures floating in the air. He did not feel anything when he took the second treasure. He could not confirm his temperament at all. This was a rare opportunity. He wanted to see what he had to face to lose his cool. At this moment, Jiang Lan closed his eyes as his consciousness began to connect to the remaining 3 Dharma treasures. Each of them alone might not be able to affect him, but if he took all 3 of them together, the effects would be a simultaneous battle. This way, he would be able to find out the flaws in his temperament. At this moment, everyone was also looking at Jiang Lan. They saw that Jiang Lan had raised his foot, but he had yet to put it down. They thought that Jiang Lan wasn't going to make it. Chapter 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Someone has fought to his doorstep. Translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, he can't take another step. Seems like he's overestimated himself. What's the point? It's already very impressive to be able to get 2. He is really asking for trouble for staying at the 9th summit despite being so unsteady. Just wait and see. This disciple who's only at the second stage of the Qi refinement realm is asking for trouble. At this time, Jiang Lan was sensing the 3 Dharma treasures. After he perceiving them, countless storms were swept into his mind. Many thoughts were growing continuously in his heart. Pride, anger, greed, lust. All these thoughts kept appearing. The most obvious was arrogance. Yes. Because of the system, he could be said to have surpassed everyone. There was nothing wrong with being arrogant. But being overly arrogant was equivalent to being conceited. Arrogance must have one's own foundation in self-awareness. What Jiang Lan needed to do was to see through himself. However, in this temperament test, it was still a bit difficult for Jiang Lan. The moment he had any deviating thoughts, it would bring about all kinds of storms. It seemed that his temperament was still very ordinary. After Jiang Lan's thoughts were swept up in the storm, the foot that should have landed was still unable to land. The middle-aged man who was in charge of the arrangements felt that something was amiss with Jiang Lan. At that moment, he finally realized what was wrong. He waved his hand, and a surge of energy passed through the 3 Dharma treasures. Everyone witnessed a beam of light connecting the 3 Dharma treasures to Jiang Lan. It was as if they had become Jiang Lan's stumbling block before he could land his foot. How can this be? The middle-aged man was in disbelief. He actually wants to obtain all 3 treasures at the same time. The disciples of the other summits also realized that something was amiss. No way. 3. Is he crazy? He isn't taking them one by one. Is he trying to kill himself? He sure is confident in himself. However, if he's careless, he might get himself into trouble. Even if he succeeds, there won't be any benefits for him. Just the stubbornness of the weak. Yes, because the 9th summit was too weak, or rather, this disciple was too weak. After being criticized by others, he started showing off. If it was someone strong, they only needed to show their cultivation. No one dared to say another word. If he really succeeds, doesn't that mean he has an exceptional temperament? Succeeds? How is that possible? No, look. He's going to put his foot down. Everyone looked over at that moment. It was only now that they realized that Jiang Lan's foot was slowly descending, and the light around the Dharma treasures was blossoming incessantly. Everyone could tell that this was a sign of success. The middle-aged man in charge looked at Jiang Lan, finding this unbelievable. I can't believe he's going to succeed. The other disciples were also watching. Most of them did not believe it. How could a newcomer at the 2nd level of Qi refinement have such a level of temperament? However, the sound of a footstep heavily struck their doubts. Jiang Lan's foot had landed on the ground. A golden light bloomed from the Dharma treasures, followed by 3 Dharma treasures landing neatly in front of Jiang Lan. Regardless of whether others believed it or not, the truth was right before their eyes. What a pity. He has such a strong temperament but such an ordinary innate talent. The middle-aged man who was in charge sighed. Perhaps this is how he managed to remain on the 9th summit. That if he had a high innate talent and such a unique temperament, he would have long been taken away by the other summit masters. Jiang Lan had obtained 5 Dharma treasures. A spirit sword, a pair of boots, a small box, a set of flexible armor, and a small red gourd. He didn't try to get to know them better. Instead, he left immediately. He just needed to go back and show them to his master. His master would naturally tell him what they were. Jiang Lan left, ignoring the disciples around him. Actually, those people could have left after obtaining the treasures. They only stayed to watch the show. Those people were momentarily speechless as they watched Jiang Lan leave. After a long time, someone said, in the vast wilderness, if one cannot become an immortal, what can a great temperament do? Soon, everyone felt relieved. Indeed. Some people just lacked talent. Hard work could determine a person's bottom line, but innate talent determined a person's upper limit. Sometimes, some distance could not be surpassed by hard work. It was even more so in this desolate world. Immortals and mortals were the greatest difference. If one did not become an immortal, they would be mortal. So what if he had a good temperament? It was just that he would appear be calmer when facing an insurmountable distance. Rather than arguing with those people, it was better for Jiang Lan to go back and cultivate. After all, they would no longer be on the same level for long. He headed down the mountain. It's getting dark. I'll meet Master before going to the Netherworld cave to cultivate. Jiang Lan stared at the darkening sky and muttered to himself. Although he had signed in with the system, it would be a waste if he didn't work hard. A long time later, Jiang Lan arrived at the foot of the mountain and walked into the forest. Boom! All of a sudden, there was the sound of a powerful impact from a distance. Shameless. Kunlun will never let you off. It was a female voice. It sounded very nice. Jiang Lan had heard it, but he only took a glance before turning around to leave. A very powerful attack. Her cultivation is not inferior to mine. Jiang Lan had no intention of participating in such a battle. He looked like a cultivator who was only at the second stage chi refinement realm. He'll mention it to master when he returned. With this thought in mind, Jiang Lan decided to take a detour and leave. The location of the battle was coincidentally the shortcut he used. The sky was getting dark. Jiang Lan had taken a long detour and believed that he should be very far away from those people. He was about to reach the 9th summit. Boom! Jiang Lan, who was walking, suddenly heard the sound of an explosion again. A figure flew over from afar. There was a loud bang. The figure crashed into a tree trunk. It looked like a woman. "You traitors," came the woman's deep voice. Jiang Lan found the voice familiar. It sounded like the voice of the woman from earlier. They had fought all the way here. Jiang Lan was actually very curious. Were these people not afraid of being discovered by others if they fought like this? However, Mount Kunlun was indeed very big. Very few people knew about the small skirmishes. However, it seemed like he had been discovered. Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I know too much. Translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios. The sky was a little dark, but Jiang Lan could sense that the woman had discovered him. She was a little wary. "Who are you?" The woman looked at Jiang Lan and asked. Jiang Lan didn't reply, nor did he have any intention of staying. He was planning to leave. Right now, his powers were restrained. If the other party knew that he was at the second level of chi refinement, it would be difficult for him to leave. However, just as he was about to leave, two people approached him quickly. As the two of them stood under the moonlight, Jiang Lan could clearly see their faces. They were two men with lightning imprints under their eyes. One was on the left, the other was on the right. At this moment, the two imprints were flickering with light. It was likely that they reflected their strength. Jiang Lan thought for a moment before remembering that he seemed to have seen these two people before. They had been betting on how long he could stay in the 9th summit. It was when he was signing in at the entrance of Kunlun. It had been 6 months. It was not easy to remember. When the two of them walked over, they naturally saw Jiang Lan in the darkness. Although they couldn't see who it was clearly, they still had to say something. "Fellow disciple, please help us capture this demoness. She's a spy from the dragon race," one of them immediately said to Jiang Lan. He spoke in a righteous way. "Fellow disciple, don't listen to their nonsense. They are the real spies. You should leave first or these two people will kill you," the woman immediately said. Although he didn't know who this person was, it was fine as long as it wasn't someone from the other party. Jiang Lan looked at the three of them and said calmly, "I'm just passing by. I don't want to get involved in what's going on between the three of you. I hope that everyone won't interfere with one another." Jiang Lan was ready to leave after saying that. They could just continue with what they're doing. He didn't want to participate. After all, it was a complicated situation. Also, the woman's cultivation level was very high. It seemed she was suppressed by a Dharma treasure. He didn't really want to fight with these people. He did not know who the spy was or who the traitor was. He did not care either. Mount Kunlun was such a big place, there must be countless of capable people. For the time being, he wasn't in the right position to interfere. "Fellow disciple, be careful. This demoness knows bewitching techniques. I'll help you obstruct her. Please help me think of a way to find others for help." As he spoke, a man walked towards Jiang Lan. He quickly approached Jiang Lan. In the darkness, he saw Jiang Lan's appearance. The moment he saw it, he was stunned. Then, he laughed out loud. "It's you. I'm just passing by." Jiang Lan frowned. If the other party remembered him, things would be troublesome. Passing by. The man quickly approached Jiang Lan. His powers began to appear in his hands. It was the strength of a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, but it was not at its peak. However, he didn't need a second blow to kill the Ninth Summit's trash. "It's true you're passing through," he said. "But what's wrong is that you know too much." Whoosh! His powers surged straight towards Jiang Lan. That woman was greatly alarmed. The other party really wanted to silence him. And from the looks of it, that person was definitely not strong. Otherwise, the other party wouldn't have attacked so recklessly. He was done for. If she had known that the other party was so weak, if she had known that the other party had nothing to do with those two, she would have let him escape. This way, she would have a chance to persist until the others in Kunlun discovered her. Boom! With a loud bang, everything calmed down. Ao Longyu sighed. It wasn't easy for her to encounter a fellow disciple, but he was going to be killed just like that. Unfortunately, she was unable to move right now. How is this possible? Ao Longyu suddenly heard another person's horrified voice. This left Ao Longyu a bit confused. She looked towards Jiang Lan's direction. At this moment, her pupils constricted. She saw that the person who attacked Jiang Lan had fallen to the ground. But the most terrifying thing was that half of his body had disappeared. No, more like it had turned into a bloody mist that was scattered around. This was done by the other man. How did he do it? Ao Longyu looked at Jiang Lan. At this moment, she saw that Jiang Lan was still in a punching posture. Jiang Lan looked at the lifeless man on the ground before withdrawing his fist. Just now, he had used the power of 3 bulls. It was the result of him cultivating for half a year. It was more powerful than he had expected. Then, he looked at another man. "Fellow disciple, this is a misunderstanding. We have no intention of becoming enemies with you." The remaining man looked at Jiang Lan with a face full of fear. It was as if he was worried that Jiang Lan would suddenly attack him. He did not know what his junior brother had seen that made him feel so assured. But now, he felt that his junior brother had misjudged the man. "I know too much." Jiang Lan looked at the other party and said calmly. Since the other party wanted to kill him, he had nothing to worry about. Kunlun is not alone in this world of vast wilderness. You are so powerful. It's good to leave a path for yourself. Besides, what you know are just some ordinary things. It's not much. It's just a misunderstanding. When the man saw Jiang Lan approaching, his voice trembled. "Leave a path?" Jiang Lan suddenly asked halfway. "Right. Leave a path. I can be your guide." Boom. Before the other party could finish speaking, Jiang Lan suddenly appeared in front of that person and followed up with a punch. At that moment, half of the man's body was turned into a bloody mist. However, he had also seen Jiang Lan's face when he approached. "It's actually you. This is impossible." As he spoke, he fell to the ground lifelessly. Jiang Lan didn't pay too much attention to it. The reason he echoed after the man's words was to distract him. This was the only way to kill him. He could not let his guard down against any enemy. After that, he didn't stay any longer and left without even looking at the woman. Wait a minute. Ao Longyu immediately called out. However, Jiang Lan didn't listen to her shouts as he left instantly. Ao Longyu watched in disbelief as Jiang Lan disappeared into the darkness. Powerful and calm. Who is that person? He isn't here to kill me. She felt that she might have seen him before. Just because those two traders had seen this person before and had obviously underestimated him. They seemed to be in disbelief that it was him as well. Cough, cough. Ao Longyu struggled to get up. Which senior is he? Or which senior brother is he? Chapter 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Red Gourd Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. After returning to the 9th summit, Jiang Lan went to meet Mo Jingdong. Mo Jingdong was stunned when he saw the 5 Dharma treasures Jiang Lan took out. Then, he tried asking, "You took all 5?" He didn't really dare to believe it. He felt that it was normal if he could get back 3 treasures. But 5. Amongst Jiang Lan's batch of disciples, they were absolutely not inferior in terms of temperament. "Yes, master. I brought back a total of 5 treasures," Jiang Lan said softly. "What if there were 6? Mo Jingdong asked subconsciously. What Jiang Lan meant just now was that there were only 5 treasures in total, so he only took 5. If not, he would have taken as many as he could. Master knows that Dharma treasures aren't easy to obtain. Jiang Lan lowered his head and said softly. If there was a 6th treasure, he wasn't sure if he could have gotten it either. It should be very difficult. His strength was not enough, and his temperament was not compatible with his lack of strength. It was better if he'd further trained his immovable wisdom king incantation. Keep these Dharmic treasures. There's also this. It's some records and knowledge regarding the Dharmic treasures. You should familiarize yourself with them. In the future, it would be easier to know what Dharma treasure you received and how to use it. All the books are available in the library of the 9th summit. You can browse through them as you please. Mo Jingdong handed Jiang Lan a book and said casually. He was very generous to Jiang Lan. He only hoped that this disciple could stay in the 9th summit for a long time. It would be best if he could take over the 9th summit. However, it was too difficult. If he wanted to take over the 9th summit, it would be impossible if he did not become an immortal. He didn't even have the qualifications to look directly at the Netherworld's passageway, let alone guard the Netherworld's entrance. Thank you, Master. After that, Jiang Lan kept the book and magic treasures. He left the 9th summit and arrived at the back mountain. He intended to cultivate here. He basically lived here now. The number of times he had returned to the courtyard had decreased instead. As he sat in the Netherworld cave, he placed the Dharma treasures on the ground and began to read through the comprehensive book about Dharma treasures. Soon, he knew what the 5 Dharma treasures were and what they were used for. Spiritual swords were nothing much. They were just ordinary spiritual swords. It was slightly better than the ones in the hands of ordinary disciples. The boots were called high wind boots. With the power of the wind, they could speed up a lot. It was somewhat useful for Jiang Lan, and the boots were more comfortable than what he was wearing now. The box was a sealed box, so it wasn't a particularly useful item. It could be used to seal spirit beasts or unique items. But when it came to appropriate situations, it would still be of some use. As for the flexible armor, it was a defensive Dharma treasure that could be worn directly. The most interesting item was the last Dharma treasure. The red gourd was not an offensive or defensive artifact. It was a storage artifact. Storage treasures were not so common in the vast wilderness. At least, it was impossible for ordinary disciples to have one. Only a small number of disciples would have a storage-type magic Dharma treasure with them. Jiang Lan hadn't received any storage Dharma treasures yet from signing in. Not bad, it can be used. It's just nice to put these things in the red gourd. Even though it wasn't a killing gourd like he expected, it was still a practical gourd. After that, Jiang Lan stopped worrying about these things and started cultivating. He had to begin preparations for the golden core condensation, and then take a look at this convenient book. Condensing a golden core was the initial step to opening the Great Tao. In the cultivation system, one's powers would undergo two fundamental changes. The first time was when one became an immortal, all of the spiritual essence would transform into immortal energy. This was a change that everyone dreamed of. And the other was the transformation from gas to substance, which was the condensation of the golden core he was currently facing. Therefore, the importance of condensing pills was obvious from this. I hope I can acquire something useful during this period of time when I sign in. Something to help me condense my golden core. Jiang Lan prayed in his heart. Then, he closed his eyes and began to cultivate. Before he started cultivating as per normal, he needed to learn one-leaf vision for a while. He was considered lucky today. It was dark and he was hidden in the darkness. If not, he would have been seen. With one-leaf vision, he would have not only avoided being seen, but there was a high chance that he could have just ignored those people and leave without being discovered when he had passed by. Besides, those people were killed by him. Whether it was Kunlun Mountain or the people behind those men, they definitely wanted to find him. There were countless immortals and demons on the grand desolate world. It was not surprising to have the ability to find someone. Hence, the one-leaf vision was very important to him. It obscured the most heavenly secrets. In a cave abode on the third summit. A woman in a white and blue immortal robe sat cross-legged on the ground. Her facial features were so compact that countless people could not take their eyes off her. Her slender body was almost flawless. She was Ao Longyu. She was a little injured. Of course, these injuries were not the most important. The most important thing was the Dharma treasure that was suppressing her cultivation. She needed to enter seclusion for a period of time to condense the Dharma treasure. This was good for her. Hence, she did not ask her master for help. Master, they have already intervened. Their motives would soon be discovered. But, that figure flashed through Ao Longyu's mind. This person's existence was too strange. She had searched for a long time, but there was no information about him. Looks like I have to find Master and see who this person is. He has the power of a desolate bull. No wonder it's so terrifying. She still remembered that punch. That punch that could almost crush everything. She was frightened by what she saw. After that, Ao Longyu closed her eyes. She would figure it out after the Dharma treasure had been condensed. If that person had thoughts of hiding, she could only make further plans from there. After all, the other party had saved her before. Even if it was just a coincidence. Chapter 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kunlun Mystic Realm Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. Jiang Lan held the pill he had received from signing in a month ago in his hand. It was the Golden Origin pill. Whether I can condense a golden core will depend on this. He had spent 3 years making all the necessary preparations, all for today when he began his golden core journey. He had been cultivating non-stop for 3 years, replenishing his knowledge. It was all for the sake of successfully condensing a golden core. He did not dare to relax even after signing into the system. One had to know that a normal genius might still be preparing to build his foundation establishment at this time, but he was already preparing to condense his core. Without further thought, Jiang Lan placed the Golden Origin pill into his mouth. Then, he activated the Kunlun Heart Sutra. At this moment, Jiang Lan sat there like it was nothing. It was as if he was on the surface of a calm lake, making one feel peaceful. The Immovable Wisdom King incantation was one of Jiang Lan's most frequent cultivation techniques. He did not dare to slack off at all because his cultivation level was rising too quickly. It was so fast that he nearly couldn't keep up with it. Fortunately, there were no problems yet at the moment. There should be some turmoil after condensing his core, but it wouldn't be too big an issue. At this moment, Jiang Lan felt the surrounding spiritual energy gathering towards him. Even the aura of the netherworld was constantly fusing into his body. But no matter what aura it was, as long as it entered his body, it would transform into his power. At this time, Jianglan's body shone with golden light as a sea of clouds churned in him. Noel-Duran, it was his Dantian. At this moment, countless energy had gathered in the sea of clouds of his Dantian. A vortex began to appear. Circulating alongside the Kunlun Heart Sutra, a golden radiance began to appear from the vortex. At the beginning, the light was not very bright. However, it soon began to occupy his Dantian. The surrounding sea of clouds was also constantly merging into it. After a long time, the brilliant rays shone across the entire Dantian as a golden core floated in midair. Seeing this, Jianglan let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, the power of the golden core began to spread. Jianglan felt his entire body begin to fill with an enormous power. The power of 9 bulls that could not advance at first also started to move. In an instant, the ability reached the power of 4 bulls. Furthermore, he could sense that the power of 9 bulls would grow stronger according to the transformation of his cultivation. Under the enhancement of his golden core, the 9 steps of heavenly travel had undergone a new change as well. Currently, within the golden core realm, there shouldn't be anyone who could surpass his speed. Inside the netherworld cave abode, Jianglan opened his eyes. He looked at his hands and felt a powerful force. The golden core is complete. The next step is to focus on cultivating the essence soul. After the golden core was the soul transformation stage. This was the cultivation of psychic awareness. Once the essence soul was refined, it would no longer be restricted to the physical body. Even if his body was damaged, there was still a chance of survival. This was not a transformation of power, but a transformation of the spirit. Only with such a transformation would one have the qualifications to attempt the immortal path. However, this matter could not be rushed. Jianglan left the netherworld cave. He basically did not need to be examined now. His master would only check once in a while when he remembered. But there had never been any problems. He could feel his master looking at him with increasing relief. Perhaps, he was the first person in so many years to be able to remain true to himself. However, 3.5 years had passed. On the surface, he had perfected the chi refinement stage and was about to begin his foundation establishment. His master was currently preparing him for this. There was one thing to take note of during the foundation establishment. However, Jianglan had used the Taoist scripture to build his foundation 3 years ago, so there was no problem. After so many years, he had never acquired the Taoist scripture during sign-in again. A few years ago, he even realized that signing in had relations to his cultivation. The higher one's cultivation level was, the better the things they would acquire. But he would never receive the special item during his first sign-in. And the future gifts would never be as good as the first time he signed in. Especially the Taoist scripture. Jianglan had a feeling that if he used the Taoist scripture now, he could have directly entered the soul transformation tier in 3 months. Unfortunately, he had yet to discover any great Tao since then, so he did not dare to think about the Taoist scripture. Besides, he could not leave the 9th summit. There was no need for him to go out and take risks when he was not strong enough. Jianglan arrived at the peak of the 9th summit. His master had instructed him to look for him today. There was a high chance that he wanted to check if there were any mental demons in him. Master, Jianglan greeted respectfully as he stood behind Mo Jingdong. Seems like you've perfected the stage of chi refinement. Mo Jingdong looked at Jianglan with a smile. He was very pleased with Jianglan. It was not only his temperament, but also his innate talent and diligence. Jianglan wasn't that talented, but Mo Jingdong was satisfied. It's all thanks to Master. Jianglan lowered his head. His master had been nurturing him with all his might. Jianglan could feel it. It's the result of your own hard work. Mo Jingdong understood that resources were only part of the reason why Jianglan was able to cultivate to this level. His hard work was the main point. Alright, let's get down to business. The reason I'm looking for you this time is to tell you to follow your senior brothers and senior sisters from the other summits to the Mystic Realm. Entering the Mystic Realm to train is beneficial to you in the Foundation establishment stage. Mystic Realm. Jianglan naturally wouldn't refuse, because he could sign in at the Mystic Realm. Who knew what he would acquire there? Furthermore, the Mystic Realm could also be a path of the Great Tao. As long as it was a path of the Great Tao, it would definitely be something good. Jianglan didn't care too much about signing in multiple times. After all, he could still continue to do so in the Netherworld cave. Yes, the Mystic Realm. Mo Jingdong looked at Jianglan and explained, there are 7 Mystic Realms in Kunlun, distributed between the 2nd and 8th peaks. Every Mystic Realm had its own unique characteristics. This time, you are going to the 3rd Summit's Mystic Realm. The 3rd Summit's Mystic Realm is the most suitable Mystic Realm for making a breakthrough. Jianglan roughly understood, but he was still a bit curious. If there are Mystic Realms from the 2nd to the 8th peaks, what does our 9th Summit have? Mo Jingdong looked at Jianglan with a smile. Looking at his master's expression, Jianglan guessed it. The 9th Summit had the passageway to the Netherworld. Master, does the 1st Summit have a passageway like our 9th Summit? Jianglan had been thinking about this question for a long time.